Hey, this is Walt from StogieReview.com here for another weekly cigar review. And up this week I have a cigar that I got at IPCPR in New Orleans, and it's something that was debuting at the show from what I understand. It's an extension of an existing line, and the existing line is the Aurora Preferidos. This one happens to be the Maduro, and this is in a Robusto size. Not quite sure of the specifics. I think it's 5x50. At least it feels like a traditional Robusto. Doesn't feel too big, too small. Ring gauge feels about right. Now, you're probably accustomed to seeing the Preferidos in the tubes. At least I am. When I walk into my local cigar shop, they have various tubes on the wall. There's a red, gold. I think there's a blue, and there may be one more. But generally run about 16 bucks. They're Preferidos, and those are the ones that I'm accustomed to seeing. They're always in the cigar shop that I go into, and I've just sort of grown accustomed to seeing that shape. The only other one that I'm aware of is a double perfecto like this, and I actually don't know if this is a cigar taken out of one of those tubes or not. I'm assuming that it is not, since it appears a little bit smaller than that tube that is in my local shop. This was a gift ways back, maybe a year and a half ago. But so I was at IPCPR with Brian and Jerry, and I got a hold of a couple of these Aurora Preferido Maduro Robustos. Jose gave me one day. He gave me another one another day into the show, and my local rep gave me one during the show. So I had 3 in all. I smoked 2. This will be my last one. So let's dive right into this, and I'll go into a little bit of the information I have on the cigar as I'm lighting it to try to do 2 things at once. But first and foremost, we'll look at the appearance. And I was just kind of looking at this and taking photographs before I turned the camera on, and it looks pretty good. There's one, it's not really a prominent vein, but it's light in color and it really stands out, which runs down one side of the cigar practically the entire length. Aside from that, it looks very, very nice. The uniform color, the seam that spirals up the cigar looks nice and clean. Doesn't look like it starts and stops anywhere. Nice straight line. I tend to be overly picky about stuff like that, but it's just one of those things that really grabs my eye, whether or not that line is straight or if it looks like the tobacco was cut partially and tore away. But color looks good. The consistency of the color looks good. It looks very uniform. It's got a very mild aroma. And it's got a relatively soft feel to it. Not mushy, but it's a little on the soft side. And it's uniformly soft. It's not like there's a couple of soft spots. It just feels uniformly soft. So with that stuff out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and get my cigar cut, light it, and go over the very little bit of information that I have with you. Now, I did review this cigar before. It was back in 2007, and from what I recall, I didn't really care for it. I had the double perfecto I just showed you. I had one in Maduro also. I think that one's a Cameron. And I smoked the cigar, did the review, and from what I recall, I didn't really care for it. Just really wasn't my speed. So let's see how this one goes. Now, I was kind of confused because I didn't know if this was the same cigar that I reviewed in the past. The band says Maduro on it, as does my old review, the band in the old review. But at the same time, there were some differences in the band. The other band had a date on it, so I contacted Jose Blanco because I wasn't sure whether I was smoking, or I was going to be smoking a different cigar or if it was the same one, different shape. As it turns out, it is the same cigar, just a different shape. Because it's a different shape, it smokes differently, he tells me. The MSRP on these Robustos is about $10, and they come in boxes of 25. And I pulled up the Aurora website, and I'm just briefly going to read over it. Preferido Maduros are handcrafted using only sun-grown leaves from the same priming of plants grown on the rich soil of Santiago de los Caballeros. This exquisite blend of tobacco cured and aged in barrels is brought to peak flavor using wrappers fermented according to the century-old Aurora tradition. It's kind of hard to read, it's in italic. And goes on to say, this medium to full-bodied cigar filled with sweet cedary undertones consistently burns soft with soft white smoke and long white ash. Scroll down. The rich chocolatey color of the Brazilian Maduro sun-grown wrapper contains a sophisticated blend of choice Dominican tobaccos, Piloto Cubano binder, and offering a very complex and sophisticated cigar for the connoisseur. Elegantly presented in beautiful embossed red aluminum tubes. And this was the write-up on the Ruby Preferidos offering, which I'm told is the same cigar. So more or less we're smoking the same thing, different shape, and not presented in tubes. So I got my cigar lit. It's burning evenly. Smoke is actually nice and soft. Medium body, a little sweet, and I'm going to turn the camera off. I'll be back. We'll take a look at the first third of the Aurora Preferidos Maduro, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, well, it's about time to take a look at the first third of my Aurora Preferidos Maduro. And as you can see, I've got a thin burn line. It's a little on the wavy side. The ash is fairly dark in color. It's really nice and compact, tight, and about average in strength. Gentle tap over the ashtray knocked it off, and I get a nice clean foot. Now, I expect it to get a little wavy, a little more wavy at this point, but as soon as the ash begins to develop, it should be just fine and be back to normal. Looks like I was talking, or left it in the ashtray just a little bit too long, so it needs a little bit of a touch-up. Alright, so right away, at first puff, had a really nice soft texture to it. It's got a nice creamy feel, and immediately I began salivating, and heavily. I've been salivating a lot. I'm actually sipping a lot of water. And this is a characteristic of a cigar that can go either way. If outside, it can get a little troublesome because I get the urge to spit constantly. If I'm inside, it's not so much of a big deal. I just, take a small sip of water and things are fine. But salivating heavily, and I have been since I lit up the cigar. Nice soft creaminess. There's a little bit of an aggressive quality about the cigar when you pass the smoke through your sinuses, but it's very mild, and it's kind of nice. It's a nice accent to the very soft kind of texture that I'm getting out of the cigar. In terms of flavor, I'm getting just a really little bit of black pepper and some cedar notes, and just a very nice, rich, aged tobacco sort of flavor. And it's kind of strange because this rich, aged tobacco flavor that I'm talking about, each region has its own specific taste. Nicaraguan tobacco has a certain quality about it. Honduran, Dominican, Cuban, they all have just their own flavor. And at one point in time, I really disliked Dominican tobacco. I didn't like very many cigars coming out of it. Alright, as I was saying before, I had a little bit of a computer hiccup there. It was that at one point in time I really didn't like Dominican tobacco. Even if it was a cigar made elsewhere that had a blend of Dominican tobacco in it, there was just something about that element in the blend or in the flavor that really turned me off. And it took quite a while for me to finally come around to Dominican cigars, and I slowly found myself enjoying them more and more, and now I'm finding myself mixing them up and smoking them just as often as I do Nicaraguan and Honduran cigars. So they seem to be completely in the mix, and I'm enjoying them quite a bit. The body is medium. I'm not quite sure whether I said that or not. I was offline for a minute or so before I got the computer rebooted and back on. But anyway, the body is medium on the lower end. Finish is nice and soft, creamy texture, just a little bit of a sort of a peppery aroma through the nose. And I know I went through the flavor characteristics, and I touched on the burning characteristics. So that is more or less the first third of my Aurora Preferidos Maduro. So I'll be back in just a second. We'll take a look at the second third, and hopefully I won't get all jumbled and confused if you know, the computer doesn't have a hiccup on me again. So sit tight, I'll be right back. Alright, well, welcome back. I'm getting into the second third, or actually just about through the second third of my Aurora Preferido Maduro. And I've been smoking about 50 minutes now. Getting into the center portion of the cigar, it feels like it's burning a little faster than I would normally get out of a cigar this size. And I think it may have to do with the way this cigar felt a little soft. I don't know, or I don't think it's necessarily a humidity issue. Pennsylvania hasn't been too bad over the last few days, so I don't think it's, you know, ambient humidity getting into the cigar. It's been stored at about 68%, and the temperature is probably around 70, 72 degrees, something like that. So I think it has more to do with maybe a little underfilling and not so much environmental issues. Now, as I was smoking a cigar, as I was just getting into the second third, I took a puff on the cigar, and then I reached over across the table to put the cigar down, and something caught the corner of my eye. And I started looking at it a little bit closer, and I've been purposely avoiding it because I wanted to show you on camera. And it's actually nothing totally surprising. I've had this happen to me before. Let's see if I can get it on there. But as you may be able to see a little bit of a sparkling, something that looks like it's glistening on the end of the cigar. It's actually a little bit of tar. And I grabbed a paper towel because I wanted to show you the actual tar buildup. Now, this isn't to say that it's a bad product or, you know, it's a faulty cigar making or whatnot. This happens to cigars every now and again. Happens to the best of them. When I first encountered it, I was, you know, I was really grossed out, and it really looked down upon that cigar brand. I don't even remember what it was. I think it might have been a Perdomo product, but now I just kind of brush it off, and I know how to resolve the issue, so I'm going to go ahead and resolve the issue. So first, I've just grabbed a paper towel from the kitchen, and I'm just going to blot the end of the cigar, and you can see the tar there. And actually, it's really a little more apparent now. But it's really not as big a deal as some people make it out to be. And it's not just an issue that you get with cigar punches. And I hear that a lot. That, well, if you use a cigar punch, it definitely happens. Well, I used, I think I either grabbed my Palio or I grabbed my Zycar cutter that's sitting beside the ashtray. And in either case, I used the guillotine on this cigar, and I still got a little bit of a tar buildup. Just reaching in my pocket to grab my cigar scissors, just so I can clean up the head of the cigar. And it should go away after I recut the stick. At least that's been my experience in the past. It makes a mess of your cutter getting it off or getting it out. You don't have to cut deep into the cigar and get all of it completely off, you're still going to have really dark looking tobacco in there. But I find that if you reclip it and get the end of the tobacco pieces that look like are seeping oil, the issue really goes away in a short amount of time, or it doesn't come back nearly as strong. You may need to clip it one more time, but I really haven't run into that problem much. Usually after I take care of it the first time, I don't have that issue again. So I'm just going to blot the end of my cigar one more time, and I'm not even getting anything else on the paper towel. So that is a tiny dilemma of tar and how to deal with it. Now, if you've ever gotten this stuff, actually the first time I did this, I didn't notice it, and I got a little bit on my lip, and I get this sort of stinging sensation, like almost like capsaicin. If you've get like a dab of hot sauce on your lip or something, that mild burning sensation, that's what I was getting, and I just sort of wiped my mouth, looked down, and I had, you know, a little black speck on my finger. And I thought it must have been a dyed leaf. I looked down at the cigar, and I've got, you know, tar coming out of the end of it. And it took a little doing, but I did some research and I talked to a couple of manufacturers, and they all told me the same thing, that the issue comes from what they believe is like excess, I don't know whether it's necessarily water, hydration, or if it's a little bit of sap in the veins within the leaf. Now, there's not just, if you look at a tobacco leaf, there's not just that one big fat center vein. You know, they're actually these veins that you see on the wrapper of the cigar. They're also in the filler tobacco. So from what I understand, there's a little bit of hydration left in them after the fermentation process. And when you light up the cigar, you get pressure and heat, and then when you clip the cigar, it's almost like a straw. You're pulling that stuff down toward the end of the cigar, and it just collects. From what I understand, if you use a punch, it's more concentrated, so you see it far sooner, and it becomes a little more apparent. But I've had it happen with scissors, guillotine, and punch. So ultimately, I've seen it happen with all the different types of cutters, and I don't even let it bother me so much anymore. But it was a good opportunity to mention it and how to fix it if you run into that problem. And all that talking and clipping and talking some more, the cigar went out, so I'm going to have to touch it up real quick. Very briefly, characteristics of the cigar. Just before I turned the camera back on, I sat the cigar down to take a picture of it, and the ash dropped off. Before it dropped off, it was more or less the same. Fairly dark gray on the outside, relatively light on the inside, looking at the filler. Burn line was fairly thin, a little wavy. Body is more of what I would consider a solid medium now. Finish is easy on the palate. It is still nice and soft. I'm still heavily salivating from it. I'm still getting a little bit of an aggressive quality through the sinuses, and it's picked up a little bit as I've gone through the second third. And at this point, I think if it picks up any more, the cigar is going to become a little unbalanced, at least for my tastes. I think it's going to outshine the really soft body and mouth texture that I'm getting. Excuse me. And in the flavor department, there really hasn't been any change. I'm still getting some cedar, just a very rich natural Dominican tobacco flavor, and a little bit of black pepper. And it just seems a little more complex, a little richer at this point. And you know, it's picked up some richness and not so much new additional flavors and whatnot. So there's your second third in a really brief sort of way. So sit tight, I'll be back one more time. We'll take a look at the final third of my Aurora Preferido Maduro, and I'll wrap up the cigar and I'll let you be on your way. Alright, well, it's about time to wrap up my Aurora Preferido Maduro, and it's been about an hour and a half now, and it's about time to consider putting the cigar down, even though I generally smoke them a little bit shorter than this. The stick's starting to get a little warm. You know, when you pair that soft feel of the cigar with with the shape and whatnot. It just got a little softer and a little hotter as I went. Warm on the fingers, and then of course that warm temperature on the fingers transfers through the smoke, and it gets hot and a little aggressive on the palate. Now, smoking the cigar a little bit slower helped with that problem, but it didn't completely resolve it, which is why it's about time to wrap up the stick. Now, ever since I reclipped the cigar, I haven't had any problems with any more tar buildup. You can still see like a darker section at the end of the cigar, but I haven't had any tar come out of the cigar really at all since I reclipped it. There was a little bit of progression in body. It went from what I considered a solid medium to not quite medium to full, but it's a little bit deeper in that medium realm or medium spectrum. The finish is still nice and soft. It's still it's making me salivate fairly heavily, and I'm constantly sipping on water to resolve that issue. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that my mouth is watering, but I guess it could be if I was out and about. Now, the little bit of aggressiveness that I was talking about earlier that was accenting the really soft and easygoing body and finish of the cigar has picked up a little bit as well. The black pepper flavor or aroma that I get through the sinuses has picked up a little bit, and now it seems as though the cigar is a little out of balance. It's a little too aggressive for it's a little too aggressive for the body and finish at this point. While it's not bad, it just seems a little out of whack, like it's just a little out of balance. The flavors haven't changed up much. I'm still getting a little bit of a cedar flavor, just primarily a rich Dominican tobacco flavor, and again, that little bit of black pepper. Now, along the way, they seem to get richer and more complex, and I really like that about a cigar when it just seems, I don't know, richer and creamier and just, I don't know, more meaty as you go along. In this case, even though it got richer and more complex, it didn't balance out that spicy component, and I don't remember getting that as much in the other cigars, or my other two samples. The first one I had in New Orleans. The second one, I'm pretty sure I had it at home. I know I had it with a cup of coffee, and that's the second one I had with a cup of coffee. I think was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. This cigar, all in all, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good, solid cigar that got a little bit unbalanced and a little warm toward the end. But all in all, I think it was a solid smoke, and I really enjoyed it. The price point being about $10, they're a few dollars more than I traditionally spend on a Robusto, but at the same time, pairing this up earlier on in the day with a cup of coffee, I think is excellent. So I really wouldn't hesitate to pick them up. If my local cigar shop began picking them up in addition to the tubed Preferidos. I would definitely make sure I had a couple on hand to smoke earlier on in the day. I think I would especially like this cigar, late morning, something, one of those lazy Sunday mornings when you're still sipping coffee at 11 o'clock. And, I just think it would make it a nice solid cigar at that point in the day. I'm really unsure if this cigar is going to, if the entire Preferido line is coming out in a Robusto. I know it was presented at IPCPR, and this was the only sample that I got in a Robusto format, and all of the samples just happen to be the Maduro. So I don't know if it's just the Maduro being offered in a Robusto, or if all of the lines are going to come out in Robusto. The Cameroon and the others, which I really don't recall what they are. But all in all, I really enjoyed the cigar. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on a couple more in the future, and I hope you enjoyed the review. So until next time, happy smoking.